Jen Psaki has said that the Biden administration calls for free and fair elections in Haiti. It stands ready to receive a formal request for assistance if it comes.
Oh, so there you go. Now we're going to have the U.S. talking about we're going to come on down. That's the last thing they need. He's ready to rock and roll. It's going to be Clinton, Obama 2.0.
Who do you perceive, if anybody, within the government or within Haitian society, who represents a possibility for an actual sort of like advancement of democracy?
I think, listen, I had Daoud Andre, who's a very well-known Haitian radical activist from Brooklyn on our show, and he said, there is no one who is trustworthy in Haitian civil society. The only thing that can save this country is Haitian Revolution 2.0.
And what would that look like at that point? Like,
that would look like major attacks on the oligarchs because they're the tip of the problem, and a decision by the black middle class and fair complexion middle class as to who they're going to align with. Because don't forget, those middle class blacks and fair complexion mulattoes, they usually work for the oligarchs in their jobs.
Yeah,
they own the banks, they own all the institutions.
And so, in other
part
words,
of the problem is that this class
they've been co-opted
scheme, which is destroying the lives of 75% of the country, is supported by middle class Haitians like my own family.
Well, it's a bit of musical chairs, right? Because even if Moise, he kind of became so problematic that he was the odd man out and the oligarchs teamed up against him. I mean, he was incredibly wealthy, right? Made his fortune.
No, he was not. He had some corrupt. He was not like oligarch wealthy. He had some change. He had some
yeah. So I mean, then revolution. How does that come to be? What kind of organizing effort?
Question,
right. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. The United States does not want that.
In regards to the Haitian middle class, who provides sort of the ballast, right? I mean, that is that they. I mean, it sounds like you perceive the Haitian middle class as being the almost like the fulcrum of this situation.
Don't forget, a lot of the diaspora makes up the Haitian middle class, even in absentia.
And what about the Haitian diaspora? I mean, we have.
I wouldn't trust them to throw a cannon because a lot of them supported the coup to get rid of Aristide, and many of them just want to go back to Haiti and live bougie middle class lives with Restavek peasant, servants that they could hang out with and sexually molest when they get a chance.
Oof. All right. So you don't perceive that there is an opportunity?
I think that there's some of them that can be. I think that the hope for the country is actually in the younger diaspora, not my parents' generation. They're hopeless. The younger Haitian diaspora who's living in America realizes that all this class nonsense is idiocy. If they could really get an educational terrain and understanding the what's going on in the ground, they're old enough to have resources and education. I think there's a potential if they've nullified the oligarchy, people who are like, I would say, 60 and younger or 50 and younger, I think that they could actually transform the country, but it could not be under a neoliberal capitalist paradigm.
Let me just ask you this too. To what extent does the cohort of Haitians who are here under temporary protected status, and they've been sort of like they were like a football, I guess, in the context of like the end of the Trump administration, where do they stand? Like, I mean,
these are people who are usually poor from the peasant class who are just, they're fleeing their country. So they're refugees. They're coming to America trying to make a better life for themselves. So they're typically trying to bounce between not getting caught out there by ICE and trying to find some kind of menial job. They don't have really a say because they can't vote. They're not U.S. citizens. They can't lobby the government. But we have a Haitian misleadership class as well, with journalists at certain publications, Miami Herald and otherwise, Haitian elected officials who do the same, buck dancing, worthless dance that the black misleadership class does to the Democratic Party that usually works to the detriment of the Haitian people. So unfortunately, we are mimicking that charade within our own community.
And there's no real there's no power center in the context of this country. There's certainly no political party that is going to change.
No, because the Democrats have actually been more toxic in the relationship to Haiti than the Republicans in the last 20 years. Well, except for Bush the father, because the Bushes did the Aristide coup. So I gotta make that one alteration.
I know you just really quick, I know you talked about the Clintons just in terms of the historical progression of Haiti, but also can you expand on what happened in the wake of the earthquake and how via the Clinton Foundation outside of power
Really
there was a
simple.
neoliberal project.
The Clintons used Haiti as their personal ATM machine.
Right.
That's what happened.
Yeah.
I mean, just to go into that a little bit, because I don't know if people fully appreciate that.
Well, Hillary Clinton's brother, who died, had literal contracts with gold mining in Haiti. There was gold discovered in Haiti. He had personal contracts for gold mining concessions.
Which gives you a sense of, one would imagine that's probably a function of her role in the U.S. government, as opposed to Rodham, I think is his name, was his. What do you anticipate? Like, what do you anticipate happening? I mean, it's sort of like a bleak, sort of near-term forecast.
Welcome to Haitian life.
There you go. How do you anticipate this going down? Like, what is there?
I think the U.S. is going to send a UN probably contingency like MINUSTA that we had during the earthquake and after Aristide, that was horrendous, who brought cholera to the country because they literally poured feces into the Artibonite River and gave cholera to the Haitian people. It's either going to be a UN military kind of MINUSTA-like embarkment, or it'll be the US, which will be a nightmare because I think even America, I don't think the Biden administration wants to take that on at this time,
right?
Because that's just too much of an 800-pound gorilla in an era where, listen, don't forget, Trump appealed to the Haitians against Hillary Clinton. He came to little Haiti in Miami and said, "They've done you wrong, I'll do you right." We could take a look at the number of Haitians that voted for Trump in 2016 and ask if they flipped the state in Florida.
Wow. And so Biden certainly, I mean, I think the Biden administration wants to have as little, anything but, three alarm fire in terms of their foreign policy. I think that's what they're not interested in engaging. It's like the same thing with Israel and Palestine. They have no interest. To the extent that they can in engaging in any of this. I think they'd be happy to maintain the status quo. So I would imagine.
Right, they're going to maintain the status quo. The question is, can they orchestrate a sham election effective enough to put in a puppet that will do the bidding of both the oligarchs and the Biden administration?
Folks, there's more of what you've just saw where that came from. That's if you hit the subscribe and like button. Thank you. Really, thank you.